Welcome to Insight, a podcast of Caribou Road Christian Fellowship created by youth and young adults for youth and young adults. Join us as we seek insight from the generations of our church as they share inside their faith and lives.
Welcome to Insight. I'm so glad that you're here today to listen to our podcast. My name is Michael. I'm the Youth and Young Adults Minister here at CRCF. And today we have three different guests, actually four. We have a couple. They count as two individual people. And so we have Lindsay, we have Duffy, and we have Bob and Sara. So if you guys don't mind going around and introducing yourselves, saying how you're connected to the church, one interest in your life, one thing that you like to do or have an interest in, and then, of course, your favorite type of chip, because that's a crucial thing to know. And I'm going to start off with Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the chip one right now, because that's question. No, I like I was saying before, I got started going to the church back in 2017, and right now I'm actually co-leading a life group, and I love getting to do that, getting to build friendships there and just go deeper. That's something I love getting to do at the church. One of my interests, something I like to do. I love to do music. I play guitar. I'm not super good at it, but I really enjoy doing that. And my favorite chip. Okay, there's this chip that these chips that Costco has, and they're called popcorners. So it's like a popcorn chip, and it's sweet and salty. So it's the best, and that's my favorite. Yeah.
Those are some tasty chips. How about you, Duffy?
Yeah, my name's Duffy. I was born into the church. I'm a pastor's kid. Yeah, one of the things I love to do, filmmaking. I film the Sunday services every Thursday. Get that ready for you guys. I also really like music stuff. I play a couple of instruments. And yeah, my favorite kind of chip is probably going to have to be sour cream and onion.
Hey. How about you, Sara?
We've been coming to the church at CRCF for about 16 years. When my husband retired, we were living in Chicago and we moved back to Vancouver. The reason we chose CRCF was very easy because our children who still attend CRCF were attending there, and so it was an easy fit for us, and we knew quite a few people that were already attending there, so it was wonderful. We've been involved in different ministries of the church, Bob and I, and it's been a pleasure to serve in so many different areas. One of the ones that I enjoyed quite a bit and a lot was being on the praise and worship team at one time when we had a praise and worship team in the old days.
Okay.
Yeah. And my favorite chip is easy answer. Absolutely. Number one, Miss Vicky's Originals.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that.
How about you, Bob?
I like sweet and sour chips of all types, and I've been attending the church since 2004. For a while, I was working part-time at the church, and I've been a Christian for a long time, as you can see by the color of my hair. And one of my favorite things is to watch hockey games, and that's my favorite sport. And I've been a Christian since I was a teenager.
It's awesome.
Long time.
Wow. And what's your favorite type of chip?
Sweet and sour.
Sweet and sour. Okay. By the way, my favorite type of chip is probably salt and pepper, which is incredibly strange and basic, but I enjoy it. So
Yeah. I like it too.
Yeah.
All right. That being said, yes.
Right.
Especially during COVID, when all you can do is sit on your couch and eat chips, it's dangerous for me. So that us being introduced now, I just want to introduce the topic for today. We're actually talking about toxic relationships, and just if you haven't heard the term before, toxic, just in the sense of unhealthy relationships, when things aren't great, when things are wrong, when somebody's getting hurt in that relationship. I think of toxic relationships. Sometimes that comes up in your friendships. You have a friend and then things start to get unhealthy and then you start to get hurt by the relationship.
Mhm.
Other times it can even be like work relationships. I've had some tough situations where I'm like, should I quit my job because of the relationships that I have here? Because this isn't good.
Mm.
This is hurting me. And even sometimes it happens in your family where there's an element of toxicity of the relationship. And you're like, I'm stuck with this person because I'm related to them. But how do I walk through this? What boundaries should I have? How do I work with that? So I've invited our guests today to come on and share some of their experiences with toxic relationships and some of the wisdom they've accumulated in their lives. And finally, how they've seen God come to work and heal the pain from those relationships, but also redeem some things that have gone wrong.
Mhm.
So, all that being said, the first question tonight is, when's a time that you've experienced a toxic relationship? Is there one that comes to mind that you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about?
Well, back in 2000, and I guess that when we moved to Vancouver, we've moved back to Vancouver twice, but the first time was in 1985. We moved from Toronto to Vancouver for work purposes, and my boss in Vancouver was new to my employer, and for some reason or other, from what other people told me, is that he was very hard to work for.
Hmm.
And I quickly learned that indeed he was very hard to work for.
Mm.
And there was no way I was going to quit my job because I had a full family to take care of. So I had to learn to deal with him. And over a 2-year period, he made my life miserable.
Mm.
Um, I worked for
Hmm.
him, and the group of people that worked for him, all of us felt that he was way too demanding. And he asked us to do things that other bosses would never ask you to do, in terms of nothing you did was ever right, absolutely nothing. So that lasted over a 2-year period. And it made my life, or made going to work very difficult on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. Especially with the pressure of having your family depending on the job still and just kind of being stuck
Yes,
there.
that's right.
Wow. Yeah. How about for the rest of you?
I had a really difficult relationship, which you cannot uh, get rid of or terminate, because it was with a family member that was very close to me. And we, up to that point, we had a very good relationship and always had a loving relationship. Uh, he was not a believer. However, we just he was family, and we loved each other. And something happened within the family dynamics, and it changed his perspective. And not to go into detail, but it really made my life and my sister's life very, very difficult, and very hurtful, because it wasn't a friendship that I could terminate. It was a family member that I could not terminate. And it hurt more than I can even say. So I could not, to make a long story short, there was a lot of crying, a lot of going to God, asking for his direction, and for the for healing in my heart. And finally, it was many years of this, and I finally sought help with actually, she used to work for the church, CRCF, Pastor Ruth. She's now gone to be with the Lord. But I sought help from her, and to be able to discuss with her what, if there was anything that I could do to make things better, which we did discuss, and I did everything I could. from a biblical standpoint to be able to rectify the relationship that was so toxic. It would leave me crying. A grown lady, I was a grandmother, and I would be crying, and I felt very. At times, I felt very hopeless. However, as time went by, and I realized that I was not in control of the situation completely, I could only be in control of my actions and my reaction. And what I realized, and what Pastor Ruth also made me realize, is that what I needed to do was to make sure that I had forgiven this person, and that I harbored no hatred or resentment towards them. And I could actually say in my heart, with all honesty, that I didn't harbor any hatred, and that I did forgive this person. And that enabled me to, even though the relationship was not a good one, I could go on with my life and be content, even though this toxic relationship was there.
Wow. Yeah. Later on, we're gonna have to dig into some of like how that process works, because that's something that
it was a long
I'm really curious
process.
about.
It was a very long process. It took years, but it was out of desperation of being able to rise above the hurt, and be able to still love that person like I remembered prior to this change.
How about for you, Duffy? Do you have any relationships that come to mind?
One of my closest friends throughout middle school, as we moved into high school, he started just becoming really toxic to me. And at first, it really wasn't something that I considered. I just I don't know. Usually, me being me, I just blamed on myself and be like, "Oh, I'm probably just being mean to him," that kind of thing. And sometimes I would bring it up with him, and he'd be like, occasionally he would say sorry, but most of the time he'd be like, "Oh, if I ever do that, just know that I'm joking." And that was a phrase that would often come up a lot. If I called him out on something, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm just joking. Stop taking it so seriously." But it was very evidently something that at least if he should have at least noticed that it meant something to me. Even I don't know how to describe it. You could obviously tell that he meant what he was saying, even though he said he was joking. And over time, that just kind of escalated more and more until in 2 years ago now, grade 9. At the end of grade 9, there's this big fight we had. He ended up stealing my phone, which is weird. And I'd been talking to my friends about it for quite a while now, and there were things leading up to it before that were really painful for me, and I had to talk about it with them. And I found it was kind of the thing amongst my friend group that he was acting that way towards everyone. And yeah, it just ended with that big kind of bad send off, and we kind of kept steady throughout the rest of the year. Then over the summer that year, my friend group, it didn't change, but it morphed in a way, I guess, in a way that he kind of moved on to other things, and that kind of just part of my life, my relationship with him just got left behind, and I don't know, I feel that's something God honestly delivered me from, moving into that new group.
Yes, that's right.
And being able to be free of that and no longer have that weighing on my chest.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Duffy.
Yeah.
How about for you, Lindsay?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Duffy, I had a friend in middle school too that would make comments, and they were very hurtful. And I had told this person multiple times, even being small, right, that knowing that it hurt me, and I would tell this person, please don't say that. And I know you think you're joking, but it hurts my feelings. And this person would say, I'm just kidding. I don't mean that. And I thought, why are you taking it so personally? Blah, blah, blah. So it happens. And that was a painful experience for me. And it wasn't until I grew older and realized that was a toxic relationship as well. And thankfully, this person and I, we grew out of that. And, we're not close, but we are friendly. And I yeah, it was painful. It's never nice to go through something like that.
That's right.
And the other thing I was going to mention is I know we could talk for a long time about all of our experiences because I'm sure there's more than one. But thinking something a little bit more recent for me was a friend of mine that I felt I could never share my success around or share things that I was excited about because then this person would get jealous and disregard them and try to belittle me. And that was painful too. And I kind of just took it and then thought, oh, well, this person feels bad and I don't want to make her feel bad. So maybe I just won't share these things. But what kind of friendship is that, right? If you can't celebrate one another.
That's right.
But, yeah, that was unfortunate.
Yeah. Just hearing about like sometimes it's easy to identify toxicity in a relationship after the fact when you're like looking back, you're like, oh wow, that was really messed up or that was really unhealthy.
After. Yeah.
Yeah. But just thinking about how do you guys like when you're thinking about relationships, how do you identify toxicity? What indicates that to you and do you watch out for?
One of the things that both Lindsay and Duffy mentioned was that the person would attack them or say something that made them uncomfortable. And the person was, I was just joking.
Mhm.
It's a real cop-out because in a true friendship, when someone says, I don't like that, or it doesn't make me feel good, or, it really hurts me when you say that, in a friendship, a real friendship, a person would not say, well, I was just joking. They would say, I'm so sorry. I really didn't mean it that way. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again.
Mhm.
And they will not repeat that same statement over and over again because they have a closeness with you, they love who you are, and they want that friendship to flourish. When
Right.
someone is not concerned about you, they'll just blame it, not blame it, but use that excuse, that feeble, very feeble excuse, I was just joking.
Mhm.
But they're not joking, they're jabbing.
Mm.
Yeah. And
That's
so
so true. I'm just
yeah.
thinking about like the times that I frequently hurt people's feelings when I'm joking. Like I'm trying to say something funny and it's like, oh, that really hurt somebody's feelings.
Mm.
But if they come back to me and say, oh, that hurt my feelings, it's like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to say anything like that again. I don't want to hurt you the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
But then thinking about how people relate to me when they say, oh, I was just joking. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to let it go.
Mhm.
That when really you're right. That's almost always a cop out if that's the
Yeah.
response to somebody saying that they're hurt.
Well, when it's
That's really
repetitive.
interesting.
Yeah, when it's repetitive, I think it is a cop out. Yeah.
And then another thing too is that in these types of difficult relationships, usually the person that is the aggressor is the person that feels inferior to the other person. They feel that they don't match up to them, or they feel that they're not as capable as they are, or not as articulate as they are, and therefore they take an aggressive position in order to uphold or to demonstrate to others that they're capable also, when in fact they're coming from a very inferior position.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're kind of like identifying a power dynamic in there
Yeah.
Yes.
of like, if you're getting hurt, that's often a sign that the other person feels that you have power over them and they're trying to take that back in a really unhealthy way.
Right.
That's interesting. I
Yeah.
hadn't thought about it that way. I'm already getting insight from this. This is awesome. How else do you guys identify toxicity in a relationship? Think about that.
I'm just going to repeat a verse that I mentioned earlier when we were chatting earlier, and that's James 3:16, where it says, "Envy and self-seeking." I'm just reading off my phone, so that's why I'm looking at. Envy and self-seeking exist. Confusion, and every evil thing are there. And I think we can think of multiple examples in our lives where we were confused in a relationship, and we're like, "What is going on? What is wrong? What is your deal? What's happening? What's happening in me? Why am I feeling this way?" And that is something for me where I've learned that's a little red flag. If I see something like that happening in a relationship that I cherish, I know that this is something either I need to go and talk to God about because there's something in me that's toxic and I'm bringing it into this relationship, and now I'm kind of being quick with my answers and icy, and why is that? And
Mhm.
I go work on that with God. Now, if it's actually, I can notice that in the other person. Again, it depends on the relationship because some people might get offended. They may not want to hear it. There may be a good time to do that, to talk to them, or maybe right then and there, depending on the kind of person they are, you can actually bring it up with them and say, "Hey, I noticed something's a little bit off with you. This and this and this." So just where those elements are, I think we can identify toxicity, and depending on the relationship, if this is a relationship you want to continue in and grow in, and it's a blessing, then to address that. And if it's something that's actually toxic and not beneficial for either party, then to take the next step to potentially look at cutting off that relationship.
Mm.
And I think too that as human beings, the Bible tells us to pray for those who are not nice to us,
Exactly.
to love those that are unloving,
Mhm.
to try to get along with as many people as possible.
Yes.
But I think that as soon as you encounter a toxic relationship, the first way you feel is that you feel hurt.
Mhm.
And in that hurt, we can either go to God to help us to relieve that hurt,
Mhm.
or we become resentful and we rely upon our humanity to deal with the situation. And in my experience, whenever I try to do it on my own without the help of the Lord, um, I'm always unsuccessful.
Yes.
Whereas if someone hurts me or says something on an ongoing basis that hurts my feelings, I have to go to the Lord for help. Otherwise, I tend to retaliate, and which is not a good situation because then we become toxic to the other person.
Yeah.
Good. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
That's funny.
Also-
That brings to mind a kind of recent, really toxic situation that I was in.
Mm.
And it was fun because there was like a lot of toxicity. There wasn't a lot of poor intentions, but there was just a lot of people's character flaws coming out
Mhm.
and in really toxic ways.
Mm.
And I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a lot of wisdom in that. But this time I was actually taking the hurt and the pain to God and saying, God, like, I can't react with this, so please work in that.
Mhm.
And the other parties involved were really shocked that I wasn't coming back at them. They're like, how are you being so peaceful? How are you being? And so there was an element of them being blessed and surprised by that, where I was like, I don't have wisdom here. Like, I don't have any like great ideas for how to solve this problem and the conflict that we're in. But God's dealing with the hurt, which is really
Yes.
changed the dynamic of
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Mhm.
God.
Do you have it? Go ahead, Lindsay.
Sorry, Michael. Just one last little thing, and then
Hmm.
I'll be quiet. I was just going to say, a friend of mine actually shared something with me that I thought was so neat. Was that this person brought an issue to God and said, I don't know why this person is being so defensive and aggressive. And God actually revealed certain things about this other person's heart to a friend of mine. Obviously, not to gossip about anything,
Yeah.
but he was just revealing some certain hurt
Mm.
in this person's heart so that my friend could pray directly into those things for this person. And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice if we're not inviting God into those situations, because he can actually reveal things to us that we would never know otherwise. And like you guys have said, really open up our hearts to broken people.
Amen.
Yeah.
I totally agree, Lindsay. One other thing that I was going to bring up is that when we've had a friendship and all of a sudden it evolves into a toxic relationship, but it was a very good friendship prior to that. Sometimes what happens is that person is going through a valley that is a very difficult time, and perhaps as Christian individuals, we can, out of that friendship, we can help them go through that rough time, and that's what God is calling us to do. So we have to be wise as serpents and gentle as a dove in relationships. God, we are social beings. We need fellowship. We need relationships. And each time that we have good relationships and maybe not so good relationships, we're still learning, and we're learning something. And out of all of them, the good and the bad and the ugly, we're learning something, and we have to rely, like Lindsay said, we have to rely on God to bring us through it and ask him for wisdom in dealing with all of a sudden a change in the relationship that has happened. And Bob and I are an old couple, and we've had a lot of different relationships, some really good ones and not so good ones. And but we know that through it all, when we ask the Lord to reveal to us or to help us to deal with a certain situation, God does. He does help us. He does give us wisdom. And maybe we're the person that God has put in front of that person for a reason, and hopefully we are a positive influence on that person, and then it depends how toxic it gets and, what God really wants us to do in that relationship.
That's right. Ooh, preach, Sara. That's good.
Before we move on to the next question, I just want to ask Duffy if he had any thoughts to add to just identifying toxicity in relationships.
Yeah. Sorry, it's identifying toxicity in relationships.
Yeah.
I just kind of lost the question there.
Yeah, no worries. We went on some tangents there, but
Yeah.
Good tangents.
So just identifying?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. In my personal experience, it wasn't like there were certain moments where I'd be like, oh my goodness, I have to get out of this. Like, I can't really do this much longer. But like while I'm in it and I'm experiencing it, it wasn't really something I was thinking about. It was just something that I always put on myself. And I found, like, looking back, that I really wasn't like the person I was that I started going into that. I felt like I felt insecure. I felt anxious about everything like that was going on. Like when I was around that person, I felt like weak, like I was like just going to be attacked no matter what I did. I felt like I was just, but then I would like flip it around on myself and I just say like, oh, I'm just getting too sensitive. Like I'm just doing stuff wrong. Like, I've obviously done something to annoy this person, and that's why they're being like this towards me. And I think I didn't really realize until those like big moments when I was in a lot of pain that I was actually like in a toxic relationship.
Yeah, that's really common.
Well, that's right.
Like, looking back, is there anything that you wish you could have told your past self to be like, hey, watch out for this? Or is it like, you're still kind of going, okay, well, I wish I hadn't experienced that, but I don't know how to avoid it?
I don't really know, if I'm being honest. I would have maybe told myself to like start telling other people how I'm feeling sooner, so I could just have something to lean on. But also in that time, just going from middle school to high school, my friendships weren't as strong. I didn't really have like a very solid friend group, not the one that I have right now. So I mean, I don't know. I think the only thing I would tell myself is that it's not your fault. At least for now. Like, there's stuff you can do better, obviously, but you're not the reason this is happening. I think that would be the biggest thing that I could have told myself then.
And just hearing some of your comments of like that feeling of insecurity and like an unhealthy vulnerability almost, and just kind of expecting to be attacked, like that kind of brought back memories of some of the relational situations I've been in, and just thinking about that and going, okay, yeah, I guess that's almost an indicator. Like when you feel that you should maybe talk to somebody that has a good gauge on relationships about, hey, is this normal? Is there something going on in me, or is this coming from how the other person is? That's interesting.
Well, I think in these relationships, it allows us to look at ourselves closer
Mm-hmm.
and see whether or not we're initiating the toxic relationship, or we look at ourselves and we say, am I the one who's causing all of this? And I remember in the situation that I was referring to with the fellow at work, I spoke to a friend of mine that I was close to, and I explained the situation. And he pointed out to me that this situation was not initiated by you or caused by you in any way. And that gave me a lot of comfort in knowing that I wasn't the cause. And he told me, ask the Lord what your next step should be, and ask him to give you the strength to experience this situation in your life, because during the course of our lives, we will meet all sorts of people. And for the most part, everyone is very nice. But every now and then, we'll run into a situation where the person reacts to us in a way that we don't expect at all. And I think that at times the Lord allows these things to take place in our lives so that we learn to rely more and more on Him. And we go to Him, asking Him to help us and to give us wisdom and guidance to deal with that particular individual. So it's all of these are all learning experiences, because life is not always sweet. Life has its challenges, and every time we run to a challenge, allows us to grow in the Lord, allows us to get closer to the Lord, and allows us to become wiser in dealing with full scope of people.
We're going to wrap up our episode here. It's actually a 2-part episode because we had an incredible conversation. So next week you can come back and you can find the second part of this conversation on Insight.